Good evening, dear listener. Find a cozy spot, perhaps your favorite chair, or maybe right here in your bed, where you can relax fully. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders soften, and gently adjust your blanket so it feels just right. Pour yourself a warm cup of tea or cocoa, and as you settle in, let your head rest softly against the pillow, closing your eyes if you wish. Tonight, I invite you to drift into a quiet space where the world outside feels like a distant hum, like the faint buzz of a forgotten notification or the gentle clatter of a closing shop at the end of the day. Now, imagine a world woven from shadows and whispers, where strange symbols flicker in the dark, glowing runes that tell stories not with ink, but with bits and bytes. Think of a place where the wind carries more than just the scent of pine or salt, where it whispers secrets through tangled wires and shimmering screens. A realm where the old ways of survival, battles, alliances, cunning are now played out in the glow of tiny screens, and every move can be seen by eyes unseen. As the night deepens, the air around you seems to hum with quiet anticipation, like a distant storm gathering over icy fjords. Shadows dance just beyond your vision, and the sense of something strange yet familiar begins to settle in your mind. Soon, your eyes will flutter open, not in your familiar world, but in a place where the echoes of history meet the digital dawn, and your role will be far stranger than anything you've known before. And as your breathing slows, prepare to wake, ready to step into a world where the past and future collide, and where survival takes on a new, mysterious form. You wake up feeling rough, the kind of rough that sticks to your skin and makes you wish you had a better bed, or any bed at all. Your world is a jumble of textures and smells that immediately assault your senses in a way no modern comfort can prepare you for. The rough, uneven surface beneath you is made of cold stone or splintered wood, rough to the touch, each creak and crack reminding you that comfort is a foreign concept here. The air around you is thick with the smell of smoke from a nearby fire, mingled with the pungent scent of sweat and something else. Herbs burned for medicine, perhaps, or maybe just the lingering aroma of last night's mead spilled on the floor. You notice faint traces of something sour, vinegar, or spoiled meat, sticking to your nostrils like an unwelcome guest. Your skin tingles from the coarse fabric of your clothing, perhaps rough wool or stiff leather that scratches and presses in all the wrong places. The fabrics cling uncomfortably, reminding you that here, even comfort is a luxury you won't find easily. Your mouth feels dry and gritty, as if you've been chewing on stale bread and drinking water from a muddy spring, and your tongue tastes faintly of ash and iron. As you shift your position, the uneven floor squeaks beneath you, a reminder that this is no place designed for ease or leisure. You reach for a nearby cloth or blanket, probably coarse, woven from rough fibers, and pull it over yourself, seeking some semblance of warmth or privacy. The chill from the stone or wood seeps into your bones, making you shiver despite the layers you wear. The sounds of your surroundings begin to seep in, an unmistakable symphony of everyday life. Outside, a faint clang of metal on metal from the blacksmith's forge echoes through the air, blending with the distant wail of a child or the soft murmur of villagers whispering as they go about their day. Somewhere nearby, a merchant's cart creaks as it moves over cobblestones, carrying goods wrapped in rough burlap. You hear the hurried steps of soldiers patrolling, or perhaps a farmer's dog barking at a passing stranger. The village or town around you is alive with a chaotic, familiar hum, yet everything feels distant, like a memory from a dream you're struggling to grasp. The sky filters in through small, uneven windows or open doorways, casting shadows that dance with the flickering glow of a nearby fire. The light is muted, a dull grey or amber, and it flickers irregularly as if struggling against the darkness or the shadows that cling to the corners. The architecture is sturdy but unrefined, timber frames, stone walls, thatched roofs, all built for durability, not comfort. Clothes hang in rough piles and scattered objects, perhaps a carved wooden figurine, a worn leather pouch, or a string of beads, tell stories of lives lived with purpose and resilience. You can almost taste the faint bitterness of the air, perhaps from the smoke that drifts in through cracks or the lingering aroma of last night's roasted meat, now cold and slightly rotten. The faint tang of vinegar and herbs offers a stark contrast to the sweetness of honey or fresh bread, which seem like distant luxuries. You might even catch the metallic scent of blood or iron from the blacksmith's workshop, hinting at the constant presence of labor and danger. Your first instinct is to adjust your clothing or sit up, but the weight of everything, the textures, the smells, the sounds, keeps you rooted in this moment of unfamiliarity. It's a strange feeling, almost humorous in a way. Your idea of a bad morning used to be forgetting your phone charger or missing your favorite coffee. Here, it's realizing that your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help, and your shoes are so stiff they might as well be made of stone. You take a slow, deliberate breath, trying to steady your nerves. Maybe you reach out and grab a rough cup or a wooden bowl to drink from, water that's murky and tepid with a faint hint of something metallic or herbal. As you do, you glance around and see the other inhabitants of this place, a cluster of villagers tending to their chores, some with their heads bowed in prayer, others chatting quietly while children run past, their laughter ringing through the air like a fragile melody. Everyone here seems to move with purpose, yet their eyes flick your way with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and a trace of wariness. They see your strange garb, your unfamiliar stance, and perhaps feel a flicker of awe, like a visitor from another world or a wandering spirit just arrived from distant lands. Your presence here shifts the quiet rhythm of their day, and they respond accordingly, some with subtle nods, others with cautious glances that linger just a little longer. And as you take in this scene, the rugged buildings, the bustling streets, the simple, honest lives, you begin to realize that this is not your world at all. No, this is a place rooted in ancient rhythms, survival, and resilience. To truly understand where you've woken up, you'll need to step back and see the larger picture, one woven from stories you've yet to uncover, a story where the past shapes a life you've only just begun to glimpse. You find yourself living in a time where the world is a vastly different place, yet somehow strangely familiar. You've woken up in an era that feels like a patchwork quilt of rugged landscapes, stone-built villages and bustling market squares, stitched together by the slow, deliberate rhythm of life. This place is the early Middle Ages, perhaps around the 9th or 10th century, when kingdoms are still carving out their borders and the echoes of pagan traditions mingle with the rising influence of Christianity. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and earth, and the sky above is a sprawling canvas of grey clouds or a bright sun that beats down relentlessly on the uneven cobblestones and dirt paths. Imagine the society here as a layered cake, each tier with its own flavour. At the top, the noble class rules with a mixture of strength and cunning, their estates sprawling beyond the village, fortified against invaders and rival lords. Below them, the clergy wields spiritual authority, promising salvation or damnation, depending on their mood and the strength of their sermons. The merchant class is busy bartering in town markets where the noise is louder than Black Friday, but with more pigs than people, clucking, squealing, and bargaining in a language full of grunts and shouts. The peasants, meanwhile, form the backbone of this world, tilling fields, tending animals, and praying for good weather, all under the watchful eye of the land's lord or the local priest. Within this hierarchy, the line between rich and poor is as stark as a drawn sword. Wealth is measured not just in gold coins, but in land, cattle, and the number of loyal followers. Nobles live in halls so grand that their walls seem to breathe history, walls that have witnessed countless feasts, battles, and whispered schemes. The poor, on the other hand, scrape by in humble cottages, their days filled with back-breaking work, lifting heavy buckets of water, chopping wood, or tending the few animals they own. Fortune is often a matter of luck, or perhaps a coin in the right pocket at the right time, for survival here is a game of constant risk. The landscape around you is a mosaic of environments, picturesque yet harsh. Towns and villages cluster along winding rivers or atop fertile plains, their buildings made of timber and wattle, with thatched roofs that sag and leak when the rain comes. Markets are lively, crowded affairs, more chaotic than a modern supermarket on sale day, but with more pigs and fewer checkout lines. Streets are muddy and narrow, lined with stalls overflowing with dried herbs, salted fish, and shiny bits of metal. Churches stand as stone witnesses to faith and superstition, their bell towers piercing the sky, calling the faithful to prayer or ringing out warnings of impending danger. Life unfolds at a steady, unhurried pace. Dawn awakens the village with the clang of a bell or the crowing of a rooster, sometimes both in a dissonant symphony. People rise, wash their faces in cold streams or buckets of icy water, if they're lucky, and prepare for a day of toil. Washing oneself was viewed with suspicion, almost like announcing that you planned something shady, so personal hygiene was a minimalist affair. Instead, they focused on survival, tending fields, repairing tools, or crafting weapons. The rhythm of life is punctuated by religious festivals, seasonal celebrations, and the odd village fair. Think of it as the medieval equivalent of a weekend music festival, but with more ale and less parking. Your world here is a place where effort equals survival. Forget the gym. Carrying buckets of water or chopping firewood every day was the medieval equivalent of CrossFit, with the added bonus of earning you a callus or two. A bath? Well, taking a proper bath was almost like announcing to everyone that you were planning something shady, so most washed in streams or used scented oils sparingly, if at all. Cleanliness was a matter of modesty, not routine, and soap was a luxury that only the wealthiest could afford. Now take a moment to imagine the broader landscape. This is a land ruled by kings and queens, though their power often trickles down from a patchwork of local lords and chieftains. Kingdoms are constantly vying for dominance, sometimes through brutal invasions, other times through clever alliances sealed over long, mead-fueled feasts. Wars are frequent, and the borders are as fluid as the river currents. The threat of Viking raids, for example, looms large over the northern coasts, ships appearing like shadows on the horizon, their dragon-headed prows slicing through the water with terrifying purpose. Epidemics, like the dreaded plague, are feared as divine punishment, sweeping through villages with ruthless efficiency, often leaving behind a trail of despair and superstition. Religion plays a vital role here, sometimes as a comfort, sometimes as a source of fear. Superstitions are woven into daily life. Some believe that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off illness, or that snorting vinegar-soaked flowers might keep spirits at bay. Masks, in a sense, are everywhere. though not the kind you'd wear at a masquerade. Instead, the concept of masks is rooted in superstition and ritual, meant to ward off evil or protect yourself from unseen forces. And yet, amid all this, life keeps moving forward, slowly, stubbornly. The world is a place of contrasts, the sacred and the profane, the simple and the complex, the brutal and the beautiful. It's a time of survival, of faith, of resilience, where every day is a balancing act on the edge of chaos, and every moment holds the possibility of both tragedy and triumph. Now, as you listen, keep in mind, this is not just history. It's a living, breathing world, woven from stories that echo through time. To truly understand where you've awakened, you need to step back and see the bigger picture, an intricate tapestry of kingdoms and clans, beliefs and battles, all shaping the life you're about to step into. Because before we dive into what daily life looks like here, it's important to know the landscape of power, faith, and fate that underpins everything. You wake up to a world that feels both strangely primal and stubbornly persistent, as if time had decided to pause in a land of rough textures and simpler pleasures. The first thing you notice is the weight of your body beneath heavy, coarse blankets, probably woven from thick wool or coarse linen, designed to keep you warm through cold nights, but offering little in the way of softness. You stretch, limbs protesting with a stiffness born of sleep and perhaps a night spent huddled against the chill. As you sit up, your feet meet a cold, uneven floor, either packed dirt that feels gritty beneath your toes or rough-hewn wooden planks that creak with each movement. The room smells faintly of smoke from the nearby hearth, mingled with the faint scent of damp wood and dried herbs hanging from the rafters. You reach out, groping for a basin, likely a carved wooden or clay vessel, and dip your hands into the icy water inside, feeling the shock of the cold bite into your skin. Splashing your face with this frigid liquid is a jarring wake-up call, but it's a ritual you're used to, or at least tolerate. Without modern soap, you might use a rough cloth or a handful of crushed herbs, perhaps sage, thyme, or juniper, trying to scrub away the remnants of sleep, sweat, and yesterday's dirt. The smell of dried herbs and vinegar fills the air, a mixture of scent and superstition, as if the aroma alone could purify your spirit as well as your skin. You might even sprinkle a little vinegar into the water, an ancient, if pungent method to stave off germs or bad odors, because here your idea of a skincare routine is splashing some water and praying that the neighbors don't get too close. Forget your 10-step routine. Here, survival means believing that a splash of cold water and a sprig of rosemary are enough to keep you presentable. Stepping away from the water, you glance around your humble abode. The interior is modest but sturdy, walls made of darkened timber, their surfaces scarred by age and smoke, creating a textured patchwork of grain and knots. The air is thick with the scent of burning wood, the faint aroma of dried herbs, and the lingering smell of smouldering peat from the fire that's been crackling all night. The fireplace dominates one wall, a rough stone hearth with a blackened cauldron or a spit for roasting hanging above it, emitting a constant comforting crackle and scent of charred wood. You hear the faint creak of old wooden furniture, perhaps a bench or a table, each joint worn smooth by years of use. Utensils of clay, bone, or hammered iron are scattered about, some cracked, some polished from long use. Rags and cloths, coarse and faded, are draped over hooks or piled in corners, waiting to wipe away the dirt or polish the metal. The textures inside your home tell stories of resilience, of materials that have weathered storms and centuries, much like the lives that pass through them. Now consider your clothing. You're probably wearing a thick tunic, rough-spun wool, heavy enough to make movement feel a bit stiff. and a pair of trousers or leggings that scratch against your skin. Leather boots, hardened from years of wear, pinch your ankles with every step, and a woolen cloak or shawl drapes over your shoulders, providing warmth but adding to the overall sensation of bulk. Your skin reacts accordingly, itching from the coarse fabric, stiff from the days spent in these heavy clothes. Your idea of comfortable might be a cozy sweater. Here, it's wool that feels like hugging a hedgehog. As you move, you notice how your body stiffens, muscles tense from the weight and the cold, yet somehow you're used to it. You might even find yourself swatting away a persistent itch or adjusting a rough collar that irritates your neck. And then there's breakfast, the smell of sour bread, hard and dense, probably toasted over the fire to bring out some flavor. A slice of aged cheese, maybe a little moldy, but full of character, accompanies a thin bowl of broth, cloudy and lukewarm, tasting faintly of herbs and whatever was left in the pot overnight. It's not the kind of meal that makes you feel pampered, but it's enough to fuel your body for the day's work. Imagine biting into a piece of dry, crumbly bread, the taste robust with salt and yeast, and washing it down with a sip of water that's slightly tepid, with a faint metallic tinge, like drinking from a well that's seen better days. Modern coffee or smoothie bowls, here. It's just bread, cheese, and a shot of courage to face whatever comes next, with a smile or a grimace depending on the day. Before you step out into the world, perhaps to tend the livestock, gather firewood, or start your daily chores, there's a ritual in many households, a sprinkling of herbs or a quick prayer, a few whispered words to ward off illness or evil spirits. Maybe an amulet hangs around your neck, an iron charm or a carved talisman believed to protect you from disease or misfortune. You might even burn a pinch of herbs or incense like juniper or mugwort, hoping that the smoke will purify your surroundings or keep the bad spirits at bay. Some believe that saying a prayer or crossing yourself before heading outside can make all the difference, a moment of faith in a world where danger lurks in every shadow. As you prepare to leave your humble space, you might feel a strange mix of familiarity and alienation. The textures, smells, and routines are deeply ingrained, yet they seem so different from the sleek, scentless, sanitized routines of modern life. Your idea of what constitutes cleanliness or comfort might be turned upside down, but you've adapted, more or less, because survival here is about resilience, not convenience. And so with your rough clothes, your humble breakfast, and your rituals, you step into the day. The world outside awaits, full of noise, activity, and the endless challenge of living in a land where every moment is a test of strength, patience, and endurance. But for now, allow yourself this brief moment of calm, this quiet pause before you venture forth into a life that may be as harsh as it is beautiful. Because in this ancient home, life is a continuous dance with elements both seen and unseen, one that's been performed for centuries, long before the glow of screens or the comfort of modern soap. The earth beneath your feet is uneven, a patchwork of mud, loose stones and dust, kicked up by the hurried footsteps of villagers going about their routines. The sky above is a dull grey, casting a muted pallor over everything. No bright sun to warm your bones, only the steady hum of an awakening world. As you stride forward, you tighten your grip on the leather satchel or bag slung over your shoulder, probably filled with herbs, small tools, or perhaps a few tokens of your craft, clutching it as if to remind yourself of your purpose for the day. Your cloak billows slightly in the cold breeze, and the rough fabric brushes against your skin, reminding you of the rugged life you lead. The muffled sounds of the village start to emerge, the distant clang of blacksmith hammers, the faint murmur of voices, the occasional neigh of a horse, or the squawk of a crow. The marketplace is already stirring, a chaotic orchestra of shouts, laughter, and the clatter of carts and traders haggling over goods. You feel the weight of your role pressing on your shoulders, your part in this complex social dance, a vital thread in the fabric of community life. Today, your purpose is clear: to serve, to heal, to provide some semblance of order amid the chaos. You are a healer, a wise man, or perhaps a healer's apprentice, someone trusted enough to be called upon when illness or injury strikes. Children stare at you as you pass, their eyes wide and curious, half in awe, half in fear. They whisper among themselves, nudging each other and pointing with trembling fingers, unsure whether to be fascinated or frightened by the strange attire you wear. Your clothing is coarse and heavy, made of thick wool or linen, designed to withstand the damp and cold. The fabric feels rough against your skin, and the layers are stiff from frequent washing and patching. Your boots crunch against the gravel and mud, squeaking softly with each step. Your hands, rough and calloused from years of work, clutch a staff or a bundle of herbs, perhaps dried juniper, willow bark, or a handful of moss, ready for whatever the day might bring. The air carries a medley of scents: burnt wood from the blacksmith's forge, the earthy aroma of damp soil, the faint sweetness of dried berries, and the sharp tang of vinegar or fermented herbs. It's a smellscape that's both familiar and oddly invigorating, more pungent than your modern mornings, but somehow grounding. You move through the village, your presence noticeable, yet quiet, an invisible thread connecting the bustling market stalls, the humble cottages with thatched roofs, and the stone churches that rise like silent guardians against the grey sky. Your steps take you toward the places where your work is most needed, perhaps a humble hut with a sick child, or the town square where a community gathers to hear news or witness a ritual. The faces you see are lined with stories, some worn by hardship, others marked by hope. Traders call out their wares: salted fish, dried herbs, leather goods, and trinkets carved from bone or antler. Men and women barter with sharp voices, their hands busy inspecting, exchanging, and bargaining. Soldiers patrol with stern expressions, their weapons sheathed but ever ready, eyes scanning the crowd for signs of trouble. Priests and monks move with a solemn purpose, their robes flowing as they offer blessings or conduct rituals. You navigate this lively scene with a sense of purpose. You are part of this living organism, essential and respected, yet always aware of the thin line between trust and suspicion. You approach a humble home, the scent of smoked meat lingering in the air, and step inside to examine a patient or deliver a remedy. Your hands, rough from years of practice, gently palpate a feverish forehead or apply poultices made of herbs and earth. The smell of boiling roots and steaming cloth fills your nose, a familiar comfort amid the chaos. You might burn a few dried herbs or whisper a prayer, believing that some unseen force will lend its aid. Some healers carried charms or talismans, amulets carved from bone, stones inscribed with runes, believed to ward off the worst of illnesses. Others thought that poking a patient with a long stick from a safe distance was a sign of respect, though perhaps more for their own comfort than the patient's. The act of tending the sick is a mix of science and superstition, of careful observation and hopeful prayer. As you go about your duties, you notice how the community reacts. Children shy away, elders nod with a mixture of gratitude and wariness, and the more skeptical eye you with a mixture of mistrust and grudging respect. Some might even mutter prayers or cross themselves when you arrive, perhaps because they believe you wield mysterious ancient powers, or maybe because they're just wary of outsiders. The village itself pulses with life, markets swelling with activity, festivals where people dance around fires, and rituals to honor the gods or ask for good harvests. You are a vital part of this rhythm, your work woven into the daily fabric of life. Now look around, see the faces, hear the sounds, feel the textures of this community, and realize that your role is more than just a healer or a craftsman. You are a keeper of their hopes and fears, a guardian amid the chaos, an essential thread in this ancient tapestry. But behind every busy market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, a fear of the unknown, of spirits and gods, of illness and war. To understand why they look at you as they do, we need to step beyond the immediate scene and into their beliefs, their superstitions, and the stories they tell themselves about health, fate, and the divine. Because in this world, every action is intertwined with unseen forces, forces you might only begin to understand as you continue your journey. The air is thick with it, like a fog that settles over every street and alley, whispering stories of sickness and punishment. You notice how the churches are packed beyond capacity, their stone walls trembling with the weight of prayers shouted in unison. The bell tolls mournfully, each clang echoing like a warning, reminding everyone that death is always lurking just beyond the next shadow. When you walk through the town, you can almost taste the collective dread, a bitter tang that clings to the back of your throat, as if the very atmosphere is infused with unspoken fears. The heavy silence in the streets, broken only by the faint murmur of prayers and the distant clang of a funeral bell, makes it clear that fear is woven into the fabric of daily life. Here, every cough, every fever, every unexplained ache is a sign of divine punishment or the work of malevolent spirits. You sense how deeply these fears run, shaping choices, stories, and even the way people breathe. Folks' everyday routines are punctuated by signs of their religiosity. Before they begin any task, ploughing the fields, brewing a potion, or tending a sick child, they cross themselves with trembling hands, lips whispering ancient words that seem to hang in the air like fragile glass. Small, painted icons of saints are everywhere, on doorframes hanging from necks carved into wood, serving as talismans against unseen evils. The scent of incense drifts lazily through the air during prayers, a fragrant cloud that seems to carry their hopes and fears to the heavens. You see monks marching through crowded streets, singing hymns that rise and fall like a gentle tide, their voices blending with the crackling of candles in 1,000 church windows. The flickering flames cast shadows that dance across stone walls as if the divine itself is moving subtly among them. Today, you might scroll through your social media feed for a moment of fleeting comfort. Maybe a funny meme, a cute cat video, or a comforting quote. Here, though, people clutch rosaries or holy relics as if they were life jackets in a storm, desperately seeking reassurance against the chaos of disease, war, and famine. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, while others think that spitting on a wolf's tooth or wearing a charm inscribed with a saint's name might keep the spirits at bay. Rituals are as common as breathing. Burning herbs in a bowl to chase away spirits, reciting prayers over a sick person, or whispering curses at the shadows lurking in dark corners. You notice how superstition and faith mingle seamlessly like a thick stew of beliefs simmered over generations. A farmer might sprinkle salt and ash over his fields, convinced it will repel the miasma, the foul, invisible air that's believed to carry sickness. Some think that the air itself is corrupt, poisoned by the sins of humanity, so they wear perfumes infused with herbs or scent themselves with strange mixtures of spices and flower oils, hoping to mask the stench of death and decay. Others whip themselves in the streets, believing that pain and suffering will earn divine mercy. It's a curious spectacle, a community convinced that their suffering might cleanse their sins, or at least appease an angry God. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it whether you want to or not. It seeps into your bones, whispering that disaster is always just around the corner. The collective anxiety unites them in moments of crisis, yet also divides, fueling accusations, suspicions, and sometimes violent outbursts. When the plague strikes, blame is quick to follow. Accusations of witchcraft fly like arrows, some justified, others born of paranoia. Entire villages turn against their neighbors, sealing doors and windows tight, as if fear alone could keep the invisible evil out. There are lynchings, frantic mobs chasing supposed witches through the woods, desperate to rid themselves of the source of their suffering. The community is always on edge, eyes darting, ears listening for the faintest sign of disaster, a cough, a fever, a child's cry, each one a potential harbinger of doom. As the healer, the doctor of the pestilence, you are caught right in the middle of this storm. Your role is ambiguous, trusted by some, feared by others. To the superstitious, you might seem like a conduit of divine wrath, or a sorcerer wielding dark powers. They stare at you with a mixture of reverence and suspicion, whispering prayers when you approach, and clutching charms tight in their fists. Children hide behind their mothers, eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and terror, whispering to each other that you might be able to send the sickness away, or that you might bring it upon them with your strange tools and grim expressions. Elders regard you with cautious respect, nodding slowly as they offer prayers or cross themselves before speaking. You see the flicker of doubt in some eyes. Are you here to help, or are you part of the curse? The community's trust is fragile, held together by a thin thread of hope and fear. And then there's the strange, almost comical side of their fears. Some believed that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, while others thought that whipping themselves in the streets would earn God's mercy. A few even thought that the blood of a sacrificed animal smeared on doorposts would keep the disease away, an early form of natural remedies, if you will, with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Their rituals are bizarre, yet earnest, chanting, sprinkling herbs, making signs in the dirt with bones and stones. Their beliefs are a mosaic of ancient traditions, Christian prayers, and local superstitions, each one a thread woven into the tapestry of their collective anxiety. And in this world, the atmosphere is thick with a sense of impending doom, like a heavy blanket draped over the shoulders of every villager. Fear here is not just a feeling, it's a constant presence, as tangible as the cold stone walls of the chapels or the dampness of the thatched roofs. It's a shadow that moves at the edge of every conversation, every prayer, every glance. Yet, amidst this darkness, life continues, prayers are whispered, charms are worn, and the community clings to their faith and each other, trying to find light in the midst of their fears. But even in a world heavy with dread, people still reached for one another, offering comfort, sharing stories, and holding on to their fragile hope. Beyond the prayers and charms, there were bonds that kept life moving, fragile, human, and surprisingly resilient. Because in the end, the fears that haunt them are part of the story, but not the whole story. And as you stand amid it all, you realize that even in the darkest nights, the human spirit's faint glow persists, flickering but never fully extinguished. You begin to notice how, despite the constant shadow of danger, and the harshness of daily survival, people still lean on each other, sometimes just for warmth, sometimes for something deeper, a quiet reassurance that they are not alone in this turbulent world. You see neighbors exchanging bread and salted fish, their hands trembling slightly from cold or worry, but their eyes meeting with a flicker of understanding. It's in these small gestures that the true fabric of their lives is woven, an invisible thread connecting heart to heart beyond mere necessity. You realize that here, family isn't just about blood, it's about shared burdens, shared fears, and sometimes shared beds. Children scamper around barefoot, their laughter echoing through the smoky air, while grandparents sit nearby, rocking and muttering prayers or stories of old. Forget Netflix family drama here. Your cousin might literally sleep on the floor 2 feet away from you every single night because the cramped hut is home, and comfort comes from proximity, not distance. The walls may be thin, but the bonds are thick, sometimes smothering, sometimes supportive. These close quarters mean that everyone knows each other's secrets, and secrets are as dangerous as wolves. You see how family ties can feel like both a shield and a cage, a source of strength, but also a weight that keeps you tethered to a life of obligation. Meanwhile, in the narrow, crowded streets, you observe small scenes of friendship, neighbors helping each other haul a cart of firewood, whispered advice about curing a stubborn fever, or a shared mug of mead after a long day. These moments are quiet acts of solidarity, like tiny sparks in a world that often feels like it's smoldering. Yet, even in these close-knit groups, suspicion lurks just beneath the surface. With the ever-present threat of the plague or accusations of witchcraft, friendships are fragile, built on a thin veneer of trust that can crack at the slightest whisper of betrayal. You hear about disputes over land or livestock, rivalries sparked by jealous glances or old grievances, like sparks waiting to ignite a fire. Gossip travels fast, carried on the wind or whispered behind hands, sometimes fueling community cohesion, other times tearing it apart. Romance, too, finds its place amid this rough landscape. Not with sleek apps or swipe gestures, but with stolen glances across crowded markets, a quick touch beneath the wooden beams of a tavern, or a secret meeting in the shadows of a barn. Promises of marriage might be made over a shared cup of ale, a vow sealed with a handshake or a kiss that's more furtive than romantic. If you want to find love, you learn to read the signs, furtive smiles, lingering touches, the way someone's eyes dart away when you catch them looking. Tinder swipes? Here, it's a glance across a smoky tavern, and maybe the promise of a dance if the fiddle doesn't break mid-song. And if you're lucky, that dance might turn into something more, an alliance of hearts that withstands the storms outside, even if the world beyond is constantly trembling on the brink of chaos. Within this social web, hierarchy shapes every connection. Nobles and chieftains hold sway over the peasants. They are the land's rulers, the ones who decide who farms where and who fights in the next raid. You see how their authority is reinforced by displays of wealth, gold rings, finely woven cloaks, banners fluttering in the wind. Yet even among the common folk, respect is earned through deeds and loyalty. The village healer might be revered but also feared, respected for their knowledge, yet distrusted for the power they hold over life and death. Clerics and monks walk among the crowd, their robes contrasting sharply with the rough spun of farmers and warriors. They hold authority in spiritual matters, but their status can be fragile. Sometimes they are seen as divine messengers, other times as suspicious outsiders meddling in mortal affairs. You notice how their words carry weight, but also how they are often the target of suspicion, especially when their advice conflicts with local beliefs or superstitions. After all, here, faith is not just a matter of doctrine, it's a survival tool, a way to make sense of the chaos. And then there are the communal rituals, festivals, processions, and gatherings that are as much about social cohesion as they are about honoring gods or marking seasons. You find yourself drawn into these moments, their sights and sounds seeping into your senses. The scent of freshly baked bread and roasted meats fills the air during a village feast, mingling with the earthy aroma of herbs and the smoky tang of fires. People wear their finest cloaks, embroidered with bright threads, their faces painted with ochre or charcoal for celebration. The music of fiddles and flutes drifts over the crowd, lively and infectious, making even the most stoic village elder tap his foot. Hands clasp in greeting, cheeks pressed together in a sign of respect, sometimes a hug, sometimes a quick pat on the back. You feel the warmth of shared purpose, even amid the chaos and tension. Yet, beneath the festive veneer, rivalries simmer. Disputes over land or inheritance spill over during these gatherings, and whispers of accusations, perhaps of witchcraft or betrayal, circulate like a dangerous undercurrent. You see how these social moments can turn from joyous to tense in an instant, like a calm lake suddenly stirred by a stone splash. Your role in this intricate web is complex. You are both a participant and an observer, an outsider who must navigate the delicate balance of trust and suspicion. To some, you are a healer, a wise person who can mend broken bodies and perhaps even broken spirits. To others, you are a mysterious figure, an outsider whose knowledge might be a blessing or a curse. People watch your every move. Some offer a smile, others a wary glance. You catch whispers, some respectful, others suspicious, about the herbs you carry or the words you speak. You might be seen as a guardian or perhaps as a threat, depending on who's speaking and what they believe about the unseen forces shaping their lives. As you move through this vibrant tapestry of human connection, you realize that these bonds, fragile, fierce, and sometimes fraught, are what truly sustain them. They are the threads that hold the fabric of their society together, woven with hope, fear, love, and suspicion in equal measure. And in your presence, those threads shimmer with a faint glow, reminding you that even in a world of brutality and hardship, human connection remains the most precious treasure of all. Because at the end of the day, even amid the chaos, life's greatest strength lies in the bonds we forge, those quiet moments of trust, the shared glances, the small acts of kindness that bind us to one another. And as you stand in the midst of it all, you see that these connections are what keep the flame of community burning bright, even against the wind of uncertainty. In this world of shadows and sparks, the warmth of human ties is what truly makes life worth surviving. The air smells faintly of bread crust, a hint of salt, and a slow simmering broth, an aroma that beckons your senses to wake from their quietude. It's a simple scene, yet profoundly grounding. A rough-hewn table, perhaps a sturdy oak plank resting on trestles, with a worn cloth or a scrap of linen spread over it. Laying your hand on the surface, you feel the warmth still lingering from the day's fires, the subtle roughness of the wood under your fingertips, and the faint hum of activity in the background, the clink of metal, the murmur of voices, the occasional shout from the market beyond the walls. Before you are trenchers of coarse, dark bread, crusty and thick enough to scrape your teeth, sits alongside a small bowl of pottage, a hearty mixture of grains, root vegetables, and perhaps a piece of salted fish or a fragment of cured meat. The textures are humble but satisfying, the dense chew of bread, the thick, earthy stew that coats your tongue, and the slightly greasy sheen of broth shimmering in the candlelight. A wooden spoon and a knife, simple and unadorned, rest nearby, their surfaces worn smooth from years of use. You also notice a rough clay cup filled with a pale, cloudy ale, its bitter tang a familiar comfort. Or, if you are lucky, a goblet of darker, spiced wine, its aroma a whisper of distant lands and luxury. In this world, the menu is straightforward. Everyday fare. A thick porridge of barley or oats, perhaps with a splash of vinegar, or a handful of herbs, rosemary, sage, or thyme, sprinkled on top. The bread is heavy, dense enough to fill your belly, but tough enough to last through the day's labor. Cheeses, if available, are firm and salty, sliced into chunks or grated onto the stew. Eggs, boiled or fried, provide a quick protein boost, while onions and garlic lend pungency and warmth. On fish days, a salted or smoked fish appears, its saltiness cutting through the richness of the meat, reminding you of the sea's persistent presence. The ritual begins with a quiet moment, perhaps a quick crossing of yourself or a whispered prayer, before you lift your cup or take a bite. Hands are washed in a basin of cold water, the damp cloth wiping away dirt and sweat, a simple act that feels almost sacred amid the noise of daily life. You observe the order at the table. The lord or chieftain, perhaps seated at the head, receives the first portion. Others follow, serving themselves with measured movements. No need for the modern frenzy of seconds. Instead, there is a shared understanding that food is both a gift and a responsibility. The feast itself is a symphony of textures and tastes, rough bread, hearty broth, the salt of preserved meats, and the occasional sweetness of dried fruits like dates or figs. These rare treasures are passed around with reverence, their chewy, sticky consistency a reminder of distant lands and wealth. The aroma of roasted meats, perhaps a whole pig or a roasted bird, wafts through the hall, mingling with the smell of fresh herbs and burning wood. Sometimes a dish of honey or a handful of nuts appears, offering a fleeting moment of indulgence amidst the austerity. In the midst of this, you notice how the act of eating is intertwined with social hierarchy. The highest-ranking person at the table may carve the meat, their knife flashing as they distribute portions, an unspoken sign of authority. Lower status figures wait patiently, eyes lowered or fixed on their food, knowing that manners are as much about respect as tradition. The rich, dressed in fine furs and embroidered cloaks, savor their wine and delicacies, their laughter and chatter echoing louder, their status made clear in the richness of their table. Meanwhile, the common folk, farmers, artisans, share a simpler meal, their voices hushed but steady, their hunger tempered by community and necessity. Sometimes a small dispute erupts, an argument over a soggy piece of bread or a disputed portion of meat. The tension flickers like flame in a wind, quickly subdued by a quick exchange of words or a shared sip of ale. You catch glimpses of rivalries, some born of land disputes, others of old jealousies, yet at the table these dissolve into shared presence. The feast is both a celebration and a reminder that life's struggles are momentary, swallowed down with bread and ale. Outside in the market or the village square, the scene shifts. Bakers shouting the day's fresh bread, the baker's large flour-dusted hands kneading dough, while vendors hawk their goods amid the scent of malt and roasted barley. The aroma of freshly baked loaves mingles with the sharp tang of vinegar and the smoky scent of dried herbs drying in the sun. You see the baker cross the street, clutching a sack of warm bread, while the merchant barters fiercely over a barrel of pickled vegetables or a jar of honey. Every ingredient has its story, a journey from distant fields, forests, or the sea, and each brings a piece of the world to this humble table. And yet, even amid abundance, Scarcity whispers at the edges. You notice how leftovers are carefully stored in clay jars or wrapped in cloth. Nothing is wasted here. Every scrap of bread is dipped into broth or given to the children, bones are boiled for broth, and vegetable peels are composted for the garden. The hunger, though often sated, lingers quietly, sharpening the senses and making every taste, every aroma, feel like a treasure. After the last crumb is eaten and the last sip taken, the village breathes out. The table's empty, and the night begins to whisper promises of music, stories, and small acts of bravery. Perhaps a song around the fire, or a secret meeting beneath the stars. You feel the warmth of shared sustenance still lingering, a gentle reminder that despite the hardships, life's greatest comfort is often found at the table, where kinship, tradition, and the simple joy of breaking bread bind everyone together in this rugged world. And as you rise, feeling the weight of the day's fare settle into your bones, you know that tomorrow's feast will be only as good as the bonds formed over the humble meal today. Lanterns flicker to life, casting pools of amber glow along the uneven cobblestones, and shadows stretch long across the narrow streets. The smell of warm ale mingles with the damp earth and the faint scent of smoked meat from nearby houses. As you walk through the village, the muffled murmur of voices rises and falls, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter, kind, unpretentious, and a little wild. You hear the soft shuffle of footsteps, the clatter of wooden mugs, and the faint scrape of a chair as someone leans back, sighing with contentment. The scent of fermented grain and damp wood envelops you, a reminder that life continues amid the uncertainty. You arrive at the tavern, a sturdy structure with a heavy timber door that groans as it opens. Inside, the air feels thick with stories, sweat, and the scent of spilled beer. The flickering light of a central hearth dances across benches and tables where rough-hewn men and women gather, their faces flushed from drink and warmth. The wooden benches wobble beneath you, the surface uneven but comforting, like an old friend. The game of dice is underway. Small cubes of bone or carved wood tumble across a worn board, their unpredictable motion promising luck or folly. The dice roll like a promise of fortune, each throw a hope, and fall with the inevitability of a bill due at the end of the month. Laughter erupts when someone's gamble turns sour, or when a bold player's boast crashes against reality. The dice, in their randomness, remind you that fate is as capricious as a coin flip in a gale. Across the room, musicians gather. An old man strums a lute, his fingers rough but sure, while a young girl blows softly into a wooden flute, her breath weaving through the smoky air. The rhythms are simple but infectious, an easy beat that invites the crowd to join in. Boots shuffle, shoulders sway, and the floor becomes a circle of movement. You find yourself drawn into the dance, stepping lightly on the uneven planks as the others spin and clap. The sweat on your brow feels warm, the air thick with the scent of herbs, old leather, and the faint sweetness of honey mead. The steps are basic, 1, 2, 1, 2, and yet, in their simplicity, they forge a sense of unity. The dance becomes a silent prayer, a defiance of the darkness outside, a reminder that joy can be found even in the midst of hardship. Later, on a makeshift stage, a rough platform of planks, actors or storytellers perform. Their costumes are simple, stitched from scraps of fabric, their gestures exaggerated but earnest. They enact moral tales, parables of virtue and vice, of heroes and fools, each scene a mirror held up to the community. Laughter ripples through the crowd when a character's folly is exaggerated, but a hush falls when a miracle or a moral lesson unfolds. The crowd watches, rapt, as if momentarily suspended between the mundane and the divine. The air carries the scent of burning candles, mixed with the aroma of herbs used to ward off evil spirits, cumin, thyme, and a touch of sage, creating a sense of sacred space amid the rustic chaos. Sometimes a procession winds through the streets, carrying a statue or a relic, candles flickering like tiny stars in the dusk, their glow mingling with the smell of wax and dried herbs. The rhythmic clacking of wooden clappers accompanies their steps, and the community moves together, silent and reverent, as if the very act of walking in procession keeps the darkness at bay. But not all is light. The night can also carry shadows darker than the evening's gloom, moments when the flagellants appear, their hoods and whips a stark contrast to the joviality. They march through the streets, their voices raised in sermons, an unrelenting call to penance, their chants echoing against the stone walls. Their presence is both a reminder of fears and a strange form of communal catharsis. Some watch with curiosity, others with dread, as they enact their acts of devotion, sometimes brutal, often silent, always intense. The air thickens with superstitions, whispered warnings that certain dances or laughter invite evil spirits, or that a sudden silence might indicate the presence of a restless ghost. You see villagers pause, eyes cast downward, as a curfew is enforced or an ominous omen is read aloud by an elder. The tension hangs in the air like a heavy cloth, but life persists. People still gather, still sing, still hope. As a healer, an observer of both the body and the spirit, you feel the weight of respect and caution from those around you. Even in moments of celebration, a glance or a whispered word reminds others to heed the old signs, the flicker of a candle, the flight of a bird, superstitions that shape when joy is permitted and when silence is demanded. Someone approaches you, quiet but urgent, seeking a quick blessing or a word of reassurance. You touch the edge of the roof beam or the stone wall, offering a silent prayer or a small gesture to dispel bad luck. Your presence is a quiet anchor amid the chaos, an acknowledgement that beneath the laughter and music, life's fragile thread is held together by shared beliefs and cautious hope. The rhythm of the night is gentle but unpredictable. Laughter and music challenge the darkness, yet the distant toll of the town's bell or the faint peal of a church bell reminds you that all things, joy and sorrow, are woven into the same fabric. The dance continues, the song persists, and the community's heartbeat echoes through the streets, resilient and unyielding. Between one tune and the next, the village remembers. Everything begins anew, every story finds its ending, every life follows its course. The shadows may stretch long, but even in their darkness there's a flicker of light, an ember of hope, a song in the night, a promise that the cycle continues. When the last note fades and the last candle flickers out, the town's silent prayer remains, to live, to love, and to face whatever dawn may bring, no matter how uncertain. Because in this rugged world, the true festival is not just in the moments of mirth, but in the quiet perseverance that sustains it through the longest nights. Before you, a blanket of darkness settles softly, like the hush of a village at dusk, and your breathing begins to slow, steady, and deliberate. In your mind, the memory of a newborn's first cry echoes gently, tiny yet profound, a tiny bell announcing a future full of promise. You picture the hurried baptism, the water warm and soothing, the rough cloth pressed against delicate skin, words whispered softly as if to hold back the shadows of mortality. The joy was quiet but fierce, life's fragile miracle cradled in the arms of hope. And then the scene shifts, an altar outside a humble church where a young couple's hands are joined, their fingers entwined with ribbons, a simple loaf of bread and a pinch of salt exchanged as tokens of unity. The community gathers, faces lit with warmth, voices singing a brief, heartfelt tune, a song of beginnings, of promises made beneath the watchful eyes of ancestors. The air is filled with the scent of fresh bread, and distant bells ring softly, marking the sacred rite. Moving forward, your thoughts drift to the passing of years, an old craftsman's hands passing down his tools, worn yet steady, from one generation to another. A bench carved from ancient wood bears the scars of countless stories, an heirloom of wisdom and labor. The echoes of advice from wise elders linger, words etched into your memory like carvings on stone: patience, perseverance, humility. These objects, an iron skillet, a carved staff, a lace of fabric, carry the weight of lives lived and lessons learned. But life also bears its darker moments. You see a sick bed, simple, humble, the air thick with the scent of herbs and unguents. The priest's prayers are murmured, hurried, as a loved one's breath grows shallow. The unction is administered, but the silence that follows is heavy. No words, just quiet surrender. In times of pestilence, rituals are brief, the urgency overriding the sacredness, no lengthy rites, only the hope carried in whispered prayers and trembling hands. You, perhaps a healer, stand beside them, your presence a quiet act of compassion amid the helplessness. The ache of inevitable departure hangs like a heavy curtain, yet even in that sorrow a gentle dignity persists, and in the distant village square the toll of a heavy bell signals the passing of someone dearly remembered. A short procession follows, candles flicker, wax dripping like tears, and a simple grave is dug in the cold earth, discreet, respectful, a place to return to dust. Names are spoken softly in prayers around the table, the memory held in hearts and whispered among friends. The icons of humility, faint images of skulls and dancing skeletons in old frescoes, a reminder that all flesh returns to the earth, are silent witnesses to the truth we all share. The words of the wise echo quietly. There is a time for birth, a time for love, and a time for farewell. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the rhythm of life's cycles, each day a gift, each breath a fragile miracle. The world spins on in its quiet, relentless way, carrying the stories of those who came before and those yet to come. And you too are part of this endless dance, born anew each dawn, loved fiercely in the hours of light, and gently released into the darkness when the time is right. As the candle's flame dips lower, its glow softens into a whisper of warmth. The night deepens. The city, the village, the world continues, unseen but always present. The gentle pulse of life persists in every shared smile, every bread broken, every quiet prayer. Now, as you breathe in the calm, let the memory of this journey settle gently into your soul. Rest easy, knowing that even in the quietest moments, life's sacred rhythm, birth, love, and farewell, remains ever true. And when the candle's flame finally flickers out, there is only darkness, soft, enveloping, and complete. The world breathes on, and so do you. Sleep now in the gentle embrace of the night's quiet assurance. Everything begins and ends in grace, in the simple beauty of being alive.